Mayo. Get into from there. Enjoy eating Mexican food. Sure. Let's see. Today, we're going to do is do a quick review of Chapter 3 and just touch on the things that happened, and then we'll get reading all of Chapter 4. With hopefully, as long as things go well, my goal is to read all of Chapter 4 with you. We are officially done with iLearn, which puts me in a good mood. But we do still have NWEA, so we're not quite done with all the fun yet. And then, as far as that part goes, we are going to be reading Chapter 5 tomorrow. We're going to talk Chapter 3 today, read Chapter 4, read Chapter 5 tomorrow. The quiz, I have switched to make it more like the Outsiders one. We are going to get a chance to do it at home because I would rather get a chance to read with you. I thought that might make things a wee bit better. Those of you with questions, I'm ignoring. Who hate reading, again, just reminding you to help you. And then we can get back to Twttin. Serena!
Did we read Chapter 3 together yesterday?
That's what you read last night. Selma!
Do we take the quiz at home, or is it going to, take off points?
No, you're supposed to take it at home.
Oh,
okay.
We're supposed to take the quiz at home?
Isha.
How long did you put the quiz on the quiz?
So Chapter 2 is where we dealt with the idea of Mike and Connie, and they did the whole arguing back and forth and the grumpiness, like what we feel in class with kids staring at me right now, which is then going to be a theme that we're going to get into from there. And then the straw. Chapter 3. So, for those of you who may have fallen behind with your reading on Chapter 3, one, there was the big chapter, because that's where we have all the drama and the love triangle and the fighting and the going to the hospital and stuff like that. But we'll do a quick review to try and help you out. We find out at the beginning of Chapter 3 that apparently Mark is a good thief and steals a bunch of stuff because he ends up stealing a shirt to give to Brian. Brian does not steal, but is a liar and cannot tell the truth even if he wanted to. So together they make a full criminal. I said criminal and Selma raised her hand. What's up?
How many points is the class for?
And then we met Kathy and M&M and their parents, and we went over to there because that's where Brian is now taking Kathy to the big dance, and we meet M&M's parents. And with M&M's parents, we find out that apparently, like all parents, they harass their kids. With M&M, it is the failing PE, failing gym, and then he also has apparently long hair, which the dad gives him a hard time. Quick question. So, is that a thing do parents still harass kids about hair?
Yes.
Not that I know.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I don't get harassed. I don't get harassed.
All right. So, in your family, if not you, if it's a sibling, how many of you have parents that are harassing a kid in your family about hair?
None. No one. No one
My
has
sister's
hair.
emo. She literally
So
has
that's
black hair.
and part of it I was just, and it's been back and forth today from one class to the next. It was interesting. I didn't think it was a thing that parents would even bother harassing about. Right? Is it about color or length?
Length.
Really?
It's about the way it looked.
What about you, Ani? What is it?
Wait, what do you
I
mean?
don't.
The length also, or?
No detail. No detail.
All right, just curious. So with here is the fact that he has really long hair. They give him a hard time for being the hippie.
I don't remember that.
At the school dance, we meet the person with the last name Curtis, and this is where Ponyboy comes in, and we're going to get to the awkward love triangle here in just a moment. But this is where Ponyboy Curtis is finally introduced, and we meet Angela. This is Brian's ex-girlfriend. Which brings us to this. So here is our awkward love triangle that we're going to get into. Brian and Angela used to be a thing, and they used to date. Angela is the younger sister of Curly Shepherd, the one at the beginning who beat up Eminem, and Tim Shepherd, who is the one from The Outsiders. She's the youngest one in the family. And so she and Brian used to go out. Angela breaks up with Brian because she thinks Ponyboy is a hottie. So she kicks Brian to the curb to go out with Ponyboy. Ponyboy says no and throws a hand in her face because it turns out Angela suffers from a disease called crazy hose beast. And Ponyboy wants nothing to do with her being a crazy hose beast. And we're going to find out more about her crazy hose beast in just a moment. So now we have the issue where Brian hates Ponyboy because his girlfriend broke up with him to go out with Ponyboy, and Ponyboy won't even go out with his girlfriend, so his girlfriend broke up with him for no point. But it's okay because now Brian likes Kathy, and we have all kinds of awkward teenagers. At the dance, this goes into the crazy hose beast. So we have Angela, who is upset that Ponyboy won't go out with her. So how does she try to convince Ponyboy to go out with her? She convinces another boy to beat him up. Because that's what every guy wants. If a girl won't go out with you, have another guy beat you up, and then you go, how silly of me. I should definitely date you. You're not crazy at all. And that's where Mark gets in the middle of it, because Mark's like, hey, fists only. And the guy that she hired was an idiot and picked up a beer bottle and tried to smash it over the head. Mark got in the middle. Mark got his brain bashed in, so Mark had to go to the hospital. And now we begin our cycle of revenge. Problem is, Mark's going to want to try to get revenge on Angela. But Angela's a girl, and you can't go beating up a girl if you're a guy. So Mark has to get creative, which is going to bring us to some of our joy. Serena?
So with all this, if we didn't read the book, would this be enough for the test, like up here?
Isha?
But doesn't that feel...
Hang on, again, I write the test, so everything I put up here is not on the test. Because I write the test, so I make sure I cover the things that aren't on it. Yeah.
But doesn't Brian say that, like, in the middle, that he doesn't hate Ponyboy anymore
Correct.
after what he
After he's learned, as we get towards the end of chapter 3, and he realizes that Angela might be kind of crazy psycho and he shouldn't be going out with her anyway. Yeah. And then Brian, after Mark comes home from the hospital, and Mark talked to the fact that his father was a cowboy, we realized at the very beginning, Mark and Brian aren't blood brothers. Mark's parents died. They shot each other. Boom, boom.
Oh.
And so that's why he moves in with Brian. And then we also found out in this chapter, we keep finding out more and more about his family, Mark's mom cheated on Mark's dad with a random cowboy, and that's where Mark was born. So Mark's mom embraced her inner Zeus. And then Mark came along, and then both parents died. And if your question is, what caused them to die? The answer is, we're going to find out how they got shot. But not quite yet.
You just gave us...
It's in the book. It tells you they get shot. It was in chapter 1.
Wait a minute.
Serena!
So, wait, which one is Mark, the one with the brown hair?
On the front.
That looks like him.
Sorry, that's
Wait,
like
so
me.
Mark was at the dance?
The
I
middle
thought
one?
he said he wasn't going.
No, the middle one is...
Brian. He was.
So who's
Yeah.
the one? Who's he pointing to? I can't see.
They said they didn't
No,
want to
you
double
said
date.
he was gonna hang out with his friends.
At the dance. He said, are you going with a girl? He said, no, I'm not going with a girl. I'm going to go hang out with friends at the dance. We're on, by the way, we're almost halfway done with the book. If
Yay.
you look at it, it's a short book. I mean,
No more that.
chapters 4 through 11, they're short chapters. And so they're all like boom, 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 boom. So as we get through the end of chapter 4, we'll be passing like the halfway point in the book. Chapter 4, page 65. There we go. Mark wasn't feeling any better the next day. When I asked him if his head still hurt, he said, yeah. And that was typical of Mark, who never admitted to being in real pain. I called the doctor from a payphone, and all he said was that Mark would be in pain for a couple of days, and I should keep him quiet and give him aspirin. Yeah, he was a big help. I took back Charlie's car and told him what had happened. He didn't seem too interested, but he was having his own troubles. He just gotten his draft notice. Quick timeout. Do you guys know what the draft is?
No.
NBA draft.
Yeah.
It's the whole
So, not like the NBA draft and the NFL draft. That's a good draft. What we used to have back in the day for the Vietnam War, we ran out of young people to send over to fight because they kept getting killed. So we ended up having a draft where we forced young people to go over and fight in the war. And what it was is if you were between the ages of 18 and 26 and you were not currently in college or taking care of your family, they would just tell you, you have to go fight in this war. Unless you were a woman, because women's rights, you didn't have to fight, you weren't real people. But boys, you had to go, not me. Nowadays you are real people and you can go fight and kill. But back then, you were considered not as much, and so they said you can't go fight. So I know you fought for your right to die, and so go you guys. But back in the 70s, that's what happened, and you did not have a choice. If you got a letter saying that your number, what they did was just, you guys know like your student ID number? They would randomly just pick those out and go, your student ID number ends in a 5, then at the end of May, you have to go over to Vietnam and go fight. If your number ends in a 5 and you don't want to fight, you had a couple options. Option 1, you could flee the country. And a lot of people went to either Mexico or Canada. But the trouble was, you could never come back. Once you left, you could never return. The other option was, you could choose to go to jail until the war was over. But no one knows how long the war was going to last. The third option was a bit more drastic, but you could chop off a body part. Because if you were missing a body part, you could not go fight in the war if you were not in peak condition. And so there were people who would just go, "Hashuk," and then you remove body part, and now you don't have to go fight. So that's what happened with Charlie the bartender. He just found out he has to go fight in the war, and he owns a business, but they did not care. You still had to go fight. So that's why Charlie's upset. I got home as soon as I could. I hated to leave Mark there all by himself. I don't know which was bothering him most, the pain in his head or having to stay in bed. He probably would have tried to get up in spite of the doctor's orders, but he couldn't even sit up without getting dizzy. We didn't have the TV anymore, and Mark couldn't read too well. He couldn't even seem to get interested in poker. "Why don't you read me a book?" he suggested, after I'd racked my brains trying to think of something to do. "Read you a book?" "Yeah, man. Come on, don't you remember when we were little? You used to read me books all the time." Mark was too lazy or too uninterested to read himself. He'd never even bothered to learn how to read very well in the first place. This probably accounted for his poor grades at school because really he was every bit as smart as I was. I'd read cowboy books to him when we were little. We were both going to be cowboys. Books like Lone Cowboy by Will James. We'd climb the tree in the backyard and I'd read aloud and then we'd play cowboys. "Come on, don't you remember?" Mark said. Somehow, we spent the whole afternoon talking about when we were little kids. We played a kid's version of gang fighting called Civil War, and then later, we got in on the real thing. We fought with chains, we fought barefisted, we fought socias, we fought other grease gangs. It was a normal childhood. I don't know if that qualifies as a normal childhood for you, but for them, apparently growing up and beating another child with a chain was considered fairly normal. For mine, probably not quite as much. I used to be able to get all uptight about a fight, look forward to it. Nowadays, it was getting a little boring. Mark had a great memory, better than mine, which is pretty good. And he brought up little goofy things we'd done when we were young that I'd forgotten about. Like the time we climbed over the back fence at a drive-in movie and got caught. The drive-in manager put us in the back of a pickup truck to take us to the police station. We jumped out while he was doing 30 miles an hour. Somehow, neither of us was killed. But one of us broke our toe, then it had to be in a boot, and kept giving the teacher a dirty look and clap. Oh, sorry, that part. Somehow, neither one of us was killed.
You should run.
I can crawl. I mean, I can crawl. She's not going to catch me.
Stop it!
But it's funny.
You were so mean!
That's funny.
Mr. Brovicast, you're still funny.
You're so sad.
Sorry, keep going. Neither one of us was killed. Always wondered what that guy thought when we got to the police station and there was nobody in his truck. We'd get up on the roof of a 2-story shopping center and shoot water pistols at the people passing below, and then have a good time running from the cop. Mark had so thoughtfully drenched. We'd always had a car in those days, thanks to Mark's hot wiring abilities. We'd take something that looked fast and go to the expressway and drag. It was sheer luck that when Mark was finally caught doing this, he was alone. Man, I could have been booked too. And mixed up between those episodes were poker games, sometimes drunken ones lasting all night, and pool games. I was a pool hustler at a very early age. And dates, and parties, and beer blasts on the dry riverbed. We were always with a bunch of guys. Sometimes it was the same bunch for a year or two, and then people would drift away. Usually, if anyone got a steady girl, it cut down on a lot of the goofing around with the guys, and different people would drift in. But Mark was always the hub of this circle of people, and I was always with Mark. We've had some good times, huh, Brian? Mark broke the silence. I guess we both have been reminiscing. Yeah, I said. I was sitting in my favorite position on the bed, leaning against the wall with my knees up, resting an elbow on my knee and dangling a cigarette. You ever get the feeling that the whole thing is changing? Like something's coming to an end because something else is beginning? Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like right now, I couldn't care less about Angela, and I can remember, and she seemed like the most important thing on earth. Yeah, that's it, Mark said excitedly, forgetting about his head and starting to sit up. He remembered suddenly because he yelped and lay back down with a rueful grin. Yeah, like we got into those gang fights. It was so important. It was the whole world if we won or lost, and the buddies we had back then. I mean, we were like brothers. I mean, not just you and me, but all of us together. We would have died for each other then. And now, I don't know, everybody's kind of slipped away. But then we would have died for each other. Really, man, remember? It was great. We were like a bunch of people making up one big person. Like we totaled up to something when we were together. Yeah, but now we total up to something by ourselves just as easy. I understood exactly what he was talking about. Mark had the habit of thinking the way I did. The difference was that he said it and I usually didn't. Yeah, but still, don't you kind of miss that one for all and all for one routine? I mean, it's kind of sad, really, when you get to where you don't need a gang. I mean, like you did before. Yeah, but it's kind of a good thing when you know your own personality, so you don't need the one the gang makes for you. Yeah, but there's a difference. And I wonder what the difference is. The difference is, well, that was then, and this is now. Mark flashed me that lion-like grin. Brian, you are brilliant. We didn't say much the rest of the afternoon. We were just thinking. That's where the name of the book comes from. The idea that junior high was then, and then high school was the now, and the fact that things change with your friend group from junior high to high school. Leela.
Can I wash my hands?
Yeah.
Once.
Go for it. Good luck.
What are you doing there?
Mr.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah,
No, it landed. Mr. Cook.
Yeah.
You should come look.
I will in just a moment. Absolutely.
Leave. Oh,
Mark only missed one day of school. I mean, he still wasn't feeling real great by Monday, but I decided I could go anyway. He wasn't sick enough for me to stay home with him. The fight had made Mark something of a hero, and the whole story was going around school in various versions, all different. Some of them were pretty funny. Everyone was mad at Angela. They sympathized with Court. That is really cool. Sympathized with Curtis, who had been in a lot of trouble before and was kind of a folk hero, and made a big deal out of Mark stepping in to keep the fight fair. When people asked me what happened, I told them, but I could see that they were going to believe what they wanted to believe, and hearing the truth wasn't going to change their minds. People are generally like that. I don't know, I was in a funny mood Monday. The talk I'd had with Mark really got to me. I felt like I was standing apart from all the rest of the kids and just watching. It was like I could see through them and see what they were thinking, why they did things. I don't know, it was really weird. I mean, I went to a big high school. It graduated about 700 kids, and the senior class was the smallest class, so you can see how big it really was. This district included a real crummy part of town, ours, and a pretty ritzy part of town. And this can make for problems. I mean, it used to anyway, with the socias beating up the greasers. But these days, with all that love, peace, and groove stuff, the fights had slacked off. Besides, it was hard now to tell a soc from a greaser. Now the greasers wore their hair down on their foreheads instead of combed back. And this went for Mark and me too. And the socias, they were trying to look poor. They wore old jeans and shirts with the shirt tails out, just like the greasers always had because they couldn't afford anything else. And I'll tell you one thing though, what with fringed leather vests and Levi's with classy store labels in them, those kids were spending as much money to look poor as they used to look rich. It was crazy. I mean, at least that style went out. Kids don't wear ripped jeans anymore. At least that's something.
That's cap.
Well, total cap, I know.
I was some yesterday.
I see kids wearing them all the time. Which I find, like, the fad of wearing the ripped jeans started back in the 70s, and it was big when I was in school in the 80s and 90s. Kids wore ripped jeans. The fact that kids still wear ripped jeans, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool. The fact that it goes all the way back to then. It's like this rebellious thing that kids have always rebelled, but it's the same thing your parents did to rebel, and their parents did to rebel. And it's just like a teenage rebellion thing. It's kind of neat. There was another crazy thing I noticed for the first time that Monday. Okay, I'm a smart kid, so I was put in classes with other smart kids. Most of these guys were what we used to call socias. I mean, they were always friendly toward me. I'd gone to quite a few parties at their houses and even dated some of their chicks. All this time I thought, well, I mean, they like me. I'm big, friendly, wise guy Brian, so they like me. Now I saw it clearly. They didn't like me. The truth is, they were probably scared of me. But I was a poor white kid, and they were liberals, so I got invited to the parties so everyone could see what hip people they were. I'd always wondered why at those parties people were always trying to get me to talk about politics and junk that I'd never even heard of. I mean, I don't keep up on those things. When I read stuff like Hemingway. Newspapers bore me. I lead with my left when I fight, and that's about as much as I know about left, right, and so on. I have a vague notion that left is hippie and right is hick. I really don't know much else. Quick pause. Do you guys know much about left, right, and then like liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican?
I know it's never Republican.
The reason I mean, when I was, especially in junior high, I had no idea. Would have been clueless as far as left, right. And so I wonder if that's a side effect of social media and adults who just like to yell about things. And the fact that you guys are more aware of that you guys have more access to it. But like that is definitely not an area that I would have been aware of as a junior high kid. But now I knew. That Monday I could see through people and I knew what was going on. And I figured if I had been a black guy, I'd have been twice as popular. But integration in our school wasn't really swinging yet. And there weren't many black guys there. These guys would probably have offered me their sister's hands in marriage if I'd been. And I knew some black guys, some really cool fighters out in Brumley. And I'd have to remember to take a couple along to the next party with me. I mean, then they could talk about like the Black Revolution and the Panthers, which they knew about as much as I did the right and the left. I walked around that whole day laughing to myself. I mean, it was just that day. The next day I wondered what had hit me to make me act like that. And when I saw these Soch guys, they were just guys, friends of mine. And of course they asked me to their homes because we were friends. We were in the same English class and we got along. They were sincerely trying to change the world for the better. That's why they talked politics. They wore those clothes because that was their bag. That's what I thought the next day. Not Monday. Not Monday? Yeah, I knew. Mark got better and went back to school. He went to school for lack of something better to do because, well, he sure didn't dig it the way I did. We didn't usually see each other much at school. We were never in the same classes, and
Mr. Crump
we walked to school together and usually got a ride home together with someone. But lots of times, we didn't see each other until we got home. So, when Mark didn't show up for a while one afternoon the following week, I wasn't worried. He could have been any number of places. I didn't happen to guess the right one. He was at the police station. Yeah.
Why do you flush out Mr. Crump from Captain Underpants on there? Just questioning.
I didn't know about it until Terry Jones came by. Terry was short, round, and a real nut. "Brian!" he yelled as he came running through the front door. "Hey, Brian, did you hear what happened to Mark?" I was making a peanut butter and honey sandwich. I didn't get shook because something's always happening to Mark. "What? Calm down for Pete's sake, man. I ain't deaf." "Okay," Terry said carelessly. He sat down in a chair and looked around. "You having dinner?" "Cut it, man. What happened to Mark?" "Not much. He just got caught driving the principal's car." "What? He got caught doing what?" "The principal. He had to leave school early today for some reason. He gets to his parking place and there's no car. And then guess who shows up with it? Your friend and mine, Mark. You have got to be kidding. Man, Terry, tell me you're kidding. Mark's on probation now for car stealing. Yeah, that's the reason he was driving it, Terry said. Hey, can I have a sandwich? When I Googled angry screaming principal, that one came up. I thought it was a perfect picture to choose.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
Yeah, it did. That's why it's up there. I happened to be standing around when the aforementioned incident occurred. It figured Terry was usually standing around. I hear Mark explain to the principal while the cops are being called that he has to go down to see his probation officer once a week and tell him how he ain't going to steal no more cars. The deal is, he don't have no way to get downtown. There ain't no buses at that time. He don't have a car. There ain't enough time to walk since he's on his lunch hour, so he borrows the principal's car, drives down to see the probation officer, and drives back. He's been doing this since school started. And if the principal didn't have to leave school early today, he'd be doing it yet. I don't believe it. He's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. I doubt it, Terry said, starting in on his second sandwich. The principal was laughing by the time Mark got through talking to him. I breathed a sigh of relief. Mark would come through, even this, as if to prove it. Mark came strolling in. Hey, guess where I've been? You got anything else to eat? Let me see. Ah, yes, I see it in a vision. You were at the police station explaining how you had to borrow the principal's car because you had to see your probation officer. No, Terry told you, huh? Yeah, it's all straightened out now. The probation officer drives down to pick me up from now on. It's just one of those, failures to communicate. Mark sat down across the table from me, eating an apple. He was trying to look ashamed of himself, but it wasn't coming off. I was trying to look disgusted with him, but yeah, that wasn't working either. I'm sorry, he said finally. No, you ain't. We were quiet for a while. Terry got up and left. He must have thought me and Mark were going to have a fight. Listen, man, shut up, okay? As long as they ain't doing nothing to you, it's okay. I guess you can get away with anything. Mark leaned back in his chair, and the sun came through the small kitchen window and glinted on his eyes, turning them a bright yellow. Yeah, I guess so, Mark said. He smiled like an innocent lion. So what we're going to get into is, unlike Logan and Selma, who are getting their seats changed, Mark can get away with almost anything he does.
It's my fault. I'm making doing funny faces. It's my fault.
Look at this dude.
That's why I'm moving you. You get to come right up here in front. You don't have to worry about it
Where do
anymore.
I have to go?
You're switching with Mufasa. I'm just going to move
Wait,
Mufasa.
that's the same seat, basically.
Yeah, but now she can't turn to look at you is what she does the entire class period.
I can